Hello, I'm Lucas Fralick with the Wyoming Center for the Book at Wyoming Humanities. I want to give a special thank you to the staff at the Colorado Center for the Book for hosting and producing this video, and the South Dakota Center for the Book for helping us with coordination, as well as a thank you to all the authors and other coordinators, and of course, the Library of Congress. The State Center is an affiliate of the Library of Congress Center for the Book in Washington, D.C. Our mission is to promote books, reading, libraries, and literacy, with a special emphasis on promoting the unique heritage of each state or territory. The authors in this video are from the Western 2 region of the United States. Today, we are joined by Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, South Dakota, Texas, Utah, and Wyoming. Their books were chosen by the affiliate centers for the book to represent their state's literary heritage. These so-called great reads from great places are chosen every year by the affiliate centers. You can see the entire lists from this year and preceding years at www.read.gov/greatreads. These authors are here with us to discuss their works, and they'll also address the theme of this year's festival, which is Books Bring Us Together. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation and consider listening to all the authors in these Great Reads videos. Together, they're a testament to the richness and diversity of this nation's literary creativity. Today, we're joined by Dusti Bowling, across the desert in Arizona, Gregor Barrington, Cowboy is Not a Cowboy, Colorado, Anna Harber Freeman and Barbara Gonzales, Shaped by Her Hands, Potter Maria Martinez, New Mexico, Julia Lyon, A Dinosaur Named Ruth, How Ruth Mason Discovered Fossils in Her Own Backyard, South Dakota, Meghan Browne, Indelible Anne, The Larger-than-Life Story of Governor Ann Richards, Texas, Christian McKay Heidicker, The Cure for the Common Universe, Utah, and Tyler Rogers, The Marvelous Invention of Orion Mcbride, Wyoming. Welcome, hello, glad you all are here. I thought we all asked you at the beginning, and we're all getting this together, to submit to us a few questions that you would like to be asked. Fair warning, we're not going to get to all of them today. I know, big bummer there, but we're going to do our best. I want to start by just asking a very basic question. Give us a short introduction about yourself. We can start with my alphabetical list. Let's start with Dusti. We'll just move down from there.
Okay, hi, I'm Dusti Bowling, and I write both middle grade books and chapter books. And Arizona is a huge inspiration to me in my writing. I'm born and raised in Arizona. I love the Sonoran Desert, and it was a huge part of this book and a lot of places I love in Arizona. So that's what I will probably talk about today.
Thank you, thank you. Gregory?
Hi, my name is Gregor Barrington. I am a author illustrator for Cowboy is Not a Cowboy, and it's my very first book, and it's a story about friendship, and I'm so excited to share it with you.
Anna and Barbara.
I'm Anna Harber Freeman, and I'm an art teacher, actually in Colorado, and got to write this book together with my co-author, Barbara.
I'm Barbara Gonzales. I am a potter and artist by trade. I am from Santa Fe area. The pueblo is called San Ildefonso Pueblo, and I'm a clay artist.
Julia?
My name is Julia Lyon. This is my debut book, A Dinosaur Named Ruth. I am a longtime newspaper reporter turned children's book author, and I use those reporting skills to research and report and write this story, and it introduced me to the beautiful state of South Dakota.
Thank you. Christian?
Hello, my name is Christian McKay Heideker, and probably the best thing to know about me is that I am absolutely overjoyed that the Utah Cultural Representation is a book about video game addiction. That's the funniest thing I've heard all year. Yeah, I think that's it. I got a Newbery once. That's nice. It's weird to return to the first book that like I got the most hate mail about. But that's rad. I'm here. Let's do this.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And Tyler.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tyler Rogers, author of The Marvelous Invention of Orion Mcbride. Like some of the other authors here, it is my debut novel. I am an elementary school music teacher and youth choir director. So a lot of what I've gleaned from working with students finds its way into this story.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, sounds like we're going to have a good conversation today.
Hi, and I am Meghan
Oh,
Browne.
please, I am so
That's okay.
sorry.
No problem. I'm
That's
just
okay.
gonna jump in. My
Good.
name is Meghan Browne. I was born and raised in Austin, Texas, which is where the capital is. And when I was a little girl, this fine lady was our governor, and we haven't had a female governor since she was in office. And when I had kids, I decided that it was important that our kids today knew of her important legacy. So I decided to write a book about her. And I am so grateful that my book was chosen by the Texas Center for the Book to be the representative here. So thank you for having me.
Wait, Meghan, what year was she governor? How long ago was that? Sorry.
1990 to 1994.
1990. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I wish I could campaign with you down there for more.
We need a lot of help down here in the Lone Star State, but
Yeah, sure. Us up here too in Utah.
Yes, well, thank you. Yes, sorry, oversight there.
no problem. Don't worry
I
about
didn't
it.
know why I have these things. All right, so this will be kind of along the same theme. Yeah, please feel free to ask each other questions. This is a discussion. This is good. And the more, I'm just really here to help facilitate, make sure we don't have a lot of dead air. So that's great. So this is another question for everybody. I like to get a good firm base of what's going on. In your view, what do your main characters teach us about their identity or the identity of their state? Things like that. We can start with the same list, but why not go backwards and start with Meghan first this time?
Thanks. I think one of the most important things about Governor Richard's legacy was that she had a true brand of intersectional feminism and brought folks into appointments, places. She brought folks that looked like a true representation of Texas citizens into positions of power through the appointment system, and she opened doors that then could never be closed. And her legacy lives on in that way, and I'm so grateful for the vision that she had to make the Capitol building and the people inside look like the parents of children of Texas, and that was really important for her and important for our state.
Very nice. Tyler?
So my work is a work of fiction, and it follows the story of two young Wyoming boys named Christopher and Orion. And as I look at those two and their journey and how it reflects our state, I see Wyomingites as being very good-natured, very loyal to each other, and very committed to helping each other in times of need. And both of these characters themselves, in their own ways, are in times of need. And as they navigate their struggles, as they hit the bumps, one thing that they don't do is they don't falter in their commitment to each other. And I think that, to me, echoes a lot of what Wyoming's all about, that we take care of each other, especially when needed.
Great, thank you. Julia? You are muted, just to...
My story is a nonfiction story, a true story about a little girl named Ruth Mason, who in about 1905 found fossils in her own backyard. It's hard for us to imagine, but more than 100 years ago, people knew much less about dinosaurs than we do now. There were no libraries near her house, no school nearby, no beautiful museum of natural history, but she persisted in the face of many people ignoring her questions, her letters to universities and museums, and she believed that she found something amazing in South Dakota. And like I said before, just being able to research this book took me there, and I hope my book shows people just the amazing diversity and beautiful landscape and persistent people that are in South Dakota.
Thank you, thank you. Christian?
Hello, hi. I flashed out for a second because there was a pop in the power lines, but it seems like we're back. Just in case it happens again, that's where I am. So, how to talk about this without insulting absolutely everybody who lives in Utah. When I was writing about this book, I was definitely maybe this is why I'm so interested in Meghan's book. But I was definitely looking at how, video games and certain aspects of our culture have especially our media have conditioned many young men to treat women as consumable objects. And this is particularly, or prizes to be won in the case of video games. And this is particularly present in gamer culture, and it is absolutely getting better, but I still think that it's a problem, and it was particularly a problem with things like Gamergate back in 2014 when I was first started working on this book. Yeah, I mean, I do think that Salt Lake has a pretty pasty white patriarchal reputation. And it's unfortunate because we're not talking to or listening to our native communities like Meghan mentioned earlier. And maybe that's why this book is getting a little more attention right now, because we're suddenly like, oh, whoops, look what happens when we don't do this. And also exploring our feminine aspects, both inside ourselves and in our culture. And so basically, I just wanted to follow how this kid moves from a place of pure ignorance about how we treat women as prizes to a place where he begins to thaw and understand that, and just how much he's robbing himself and the world by ignoring this stuff.
Thank you. Anna and Barbara.
Well, our book is also nonfiction, and it's actually about Barbara's great-grandmother. So I'm going to let her do the bulk of this answer.
Well, my great-grandmother, Maria Martinez, her first name is Bobica, which means water lily. Also my first name is Tom Mui, which is translated means sunbeam. But I am from San Ildefonso Pueblo, where my great-grandmother was born, lived, and died. And it's with her in mind that Anna and I started writing this book together. And it also gives a traditional, historical, and elementary type of reading, but also makes it possible for adults to enjoy as well. The area is here in New Mexico, and we're on the Indian reservation, and it's about 25 miles north of Santa Fe, New Mexico. And with this in mind, pottery, the book Shaped by Our Hands, is made from clay found in our local area. So everything is historically happening here in her time. And what makes it very historical for me is that we can go back in time and share our ideas and our artistic heritage. And this is a tradition that I value, because I encouraged all my family members, and I've got 4 sons, and they have all done clay work, as well as my grandchildren. And it's a heritage that I feel that should be continued. And it's finally getting more recognition through books and television and the media, because, I think the time has come to give especially women, Native women, a head start and a head push to trying to how I would say better our understanding within our state, within our reservation, on how and what a role women plays. And I feel that Maria has helped promote women, especially Indian women or Native women in any country, that through the arts we can do a lot of things.
Very nice, thank you. Gregory.
Hi. So my book is clearly a work of fiction, unlike all the other nonfictions. And it's about two characters. We have Goat Girl and Merle. And as you can tell just from these little guys here, they're very different personalities. And I think if it's teaching anything about identity is you don't need to have the same background, have the same energy level to actually end up becoming really good friends and going on all new adventures together. So as you know, goes to the old adage of don't judge a book by its cover. And you could have some really good times.
Sounds like a good time. Dusti.
So my book is also a work of fiction, but it's very much inspired by real places in Arizona and even my own childhood. This is my 5th middle grade book, but it's probably the book I've poured the most of myself into and my own experiences growing up in the Phoenix area and how difficult it was over the summer when it's 120 degrees outside and you want to escape your home life, but there's nowhere to go because you'll die if you go outside. So it focuses on this girl, Jolene, who's 12 years old. And Jolene is trying to figure out who she is, and she's having a hard time because she's facing so much adversity in her life. She lives in an apartment in downtown Phoenix with her mom, who has become addicted to prescription painkillers. And so every day Jolene is escaping to the Phoenix Public Library, where she is checking out books, and she's learning that she really loves learning about all these female explorers and these really important like adventurers from history that no one really ever talks about. And she thinks, well, maybe one day I could do that, but then she thinks maybe she can't because she doesn't have any money and her home situation is very difficult and she's very bullied at school. And so her identity is wrapped up in so much her circumstances and not who she really is. And so when she witnesses her friend on the line have an accident and decides to adventure across the desert to go try to save her friend's life, she really gets to discover who she is on this journey inside and not just who she is based on how other people have treated her and what they've done to her. And also she meets some really important people on her journey who also help her to discover what she really wants out of life and who she really is. So that's it.
Very good. Let's do I'm picking up a bit of a theme a little bit. So I'm going to ask this question to everybody again, slightly different question. So after your readers read your book, what would you like them to take away from it? Or what lesson did you think of when you were writing, or what ideas do you want the readers to take away from this? Obviously, readers come up with their own theories all the time, but what was something you really wanted a reader to walk away with? Let's start with Barbara and Anna this time.
Well, for me, a few themes came through in the book. One of them is community and families working together, because Maria worked really closely with her husband, Julian. He did the decorating on her pots while she did the forming. She learned from her aunt. You know, as Barbara said, it's very much just a part of the traditions in the family. So I think just, learning from family and the value of passing on skills and learning. And then also as an art teacher, just to really inspire children to be creative, and that art isn't just a painting in a museum, but it can be really anything that's shaped by your own hands. And students really love clay. So getting them inspired to work with clay or just being creative, I think that's so important.
I think that Anna adds to it, especially when you're a teacher. Children love to work with their hands, and I think this is a book that would promote that as far as children are concerned. Try and get them to be, how would I say, be creative through using a media of clay as a source that doesn't involve a lot of money. They can do this outdoors. And it's how my great grandmother started. How this book was based on is that how she became interested, which children can do at a very young age, but also as an adult, we can also do that as an older person. Be creative, use your senses, And that's what my great grandmother always encouraged to say, you know, remember what you do, remember what you see, remember how to treat people. And then one of her main points was to remember the children. So if we remember ourselves as young children, this will come naturally.
It's a good point. I like that. Remember the children. Let's go to Julia next.
Thanks, Lucas. I would say one of the big messages I try to encourage kids to think about, and I hope they take away from the book, is that Ruth Mason was an ordinary person, and ordinary people can do extraordinary things. She was not a paleontologist. She did not have many shelves of books about dinosaurs, but she knew about her land, and she knew that what she was finding was not ordinary bones, the way people told her that that's what they said she was finding. And it was a time when women were not always taken seriously. And I have to wonder, I don't know this, but I have to wonder whether the fact that she was a woman was one of the reasons she was dismissed by many people. So the message I tell many kids is be like Ruth and never give up. If you believe in yourself, you might be able to find something amazing too.
Really nice. Gregory, let me go next.
So takeaway lesson, I'd say probably don't be afraid to try something new. And most importantly with that is if when you try something and it doesn't work out, don't be afraid to try again. It doesn't have to be right away. It could be way down the line. With Merle, he fell off a horse, and so he never pursued that again. And he made up excuses like he's allergic and stuff like that. But later on, he finds out that his true inner self can do other things. And so that's the takeaway, I'd say, is keep trying and keep looking for new opportunities of fun things to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Dusti?
So a big part of why I wrote this story is because when I was a kid, both of my parents were addicts, and we didn't have books back then that had characters dealing with these sorts of situations. And I mean, I loved the books that I had back then, but it was a lot of, you know, just sort of happy, very perfect families, things like that. And so what I want kids to take away from this book is just knowing that they're not alone, because there's a lot of kids out there who are living with an addict in their household. And so it is very common. We should have a lot more stories that deal with these sorts of things. And so more than anything, that is what I want them to take away from it, but also wrapping it up in a exciting adventure story where they get to learn about a lot of people who did the impossible. And no matter what is going on in your life, there are still so many possibilities for you in your future, and what's happening to you now is not going to it doesn't have to impact the whole rest of your life. You know, you don't have to carry this with you forever and bear this burden for the rest of your life. It's hard right now, but it will get better. It can get better.
Thank you. Meghan?
Dusty, I just have to say I'm so grateful that you're writing those books, because you're right. Like I feel like even in this book, I got some pushback for including Anne's addiction in the pages of her book. And I just felt like it was important for kids to know that if that's a part of their life, that it's normal. Like that is so many kids' realities, unfortunately. And so to pretend like it doesn't exist, it does nobody any service. So thank you for writing what you're writing. I think that one of the most important themes that has come out of this book, Indelible Anne, the larger than life story of Governor Ann Richards, is the idea that any old kid, just like Anne, can do things that are above and beyond even what we can imagine for ourselves. And so Anne grew up in a clapboard house on the Texas prairie, and she ended up being not the first, but one of the most impactful female governors of Texas. And so I feel grateful for her legacy, and I feel so honored to be able to tell that story that children can imagine for themselves things that seem impossible.
Thank you. Tyler.
I think with Orion Mcbride, I think there's really two things that I hope readers are able to take away from it, with the first one being a message very simply about emotional wellness. And that might look different for kid readers versus adult readers. And for me, as a teacher or as an author, as a leader of children, just generally, it's important to my core philosophy of teaching that helping kids have that emotional wellness and develop it is really important. And to me, that looks like understanding and being able to communicate emotions effectively. We are human. We're going to have the big feelings, and how we deal with it, it is going to matter. And for the adult reader, it might be a reminder, I hope, that it's very easy and very frequent for us in the adult role to defer to children's resilience when things get hard. But resilience is a survival skill. And for a lot of kids have it, and a lot of kids do need that guidance. So to take the emotional needs of children seriously and to coach and to guide. Second is very simply a message of community and of support, and that we're all going to go through major life transitions and struggles and challenges, and there's going to be times when life gets heavy. And one of the antidotes for me, and maybe for others in that, when life does get heavy, is to lean on those around you and help carry it together.
Thank you. Christian.
Just want to say I absolutely adore what everybody has been saying here. This is all touching me pretty deeply, especially because I'm thinking about it so much in my own work, the resilience of children, addiction being cut out of stories because, kids shouldn't know about that, but hey, they do, this is all very wonderful. So other than, unraveling misogyny, I'm always very interested in how audiences and readers internalize messages from stories, or rather, what I think happens a lot of the time is do not internalize messages from stories because we devalue art and artists so much in our culture. Because, these are the voices that tend to challenge things and tend to turn things upside down. And, when we're in this period where all of our publishers are just turning into these grinding machines that are trying to get as many books from as many authors as they possibly can, and the quality keeps getting worn down, I really become afraid, for how people are absorbing these messages, and of course, like when it comes to video games, we can see how some of that can, absorb into a kid's viewpoint of the world, which is to win. I don't buy into the idea that video games make kids violent. Otherwise, Japan would be a lot worse than it is. But I do think that it gives them a certain mind frame. I think another thing it does is that it makes change seem easy. It makes change seem like something that can happen overnight, or it's like if you just beat this person or you survive this level, then suddenly you'll become a good person. And what everybody is saying today is that this is a long, slow process. I recently read The Body Keeps the Score. It changed my life. I'm trying to get everybody I know to read it. But I received some not so stellar reviews because I wanted to acknowledge that this kid was just starting down the path of transformation at the end of the book, because he had only just seen what his treatment of marginalized folks in his life had been doing, and trying to make those steps toward atonement, like one-ment with his culture and accepting all parts of it and not casting anything out. And yeah, y'all are doing incredible work, especially when you're under so much pressure from the publishers. So keep it up. This is phenomenal.
Thank you. Yeah. Very good answers. Very exciting. So again, if anyone has any questions for each other or one another, feel free to chime in. I'm not going to stop you. Obviously, don't talk over them, but you're more than welcome to do so. But I'm going to start going through your list of questions that you submitted to us, and we'll get a conversation going that way. Julia, you unmuted for a second. Did you want to say something?
I just wanted to give a shout out to Christian. He and I are both in Utah, both Utah residents. So it's kind of fun to have two Utahns in this event.
Hi, Julia. I was so overwhelmed when we first came in that I didn't even say hello. Great to see your face.
And you're right. Salt Lake City is more than people think.
It is. We just got to let it come through a little bit more.
I should visit sometime. Dusti, your book takes place in a desert. I'm just assuming based off your title. I have only read one of these books, unfortunately, and I might have to dig in and read all the rest by the end of today for sure. So I'm just assuming it takes place in a desert. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm happy to correct myself. But because of that, do you have any, are there any locations in your book that are inspired by real life landmarks or features, or what about the desert really got you to write this book?
I love the desert. So I'm a rare, I guess, person who like absolutely loves everything about the desert. I don't even mind the heat or anything, which is pretty intense. But yeah, so a lot of my other books, they are based on fictional desert places. So like made up towns, made up canyons, things like that don't actually exist. Whereas in this book, it is all completely real places. And it's based on places that my family and I know and love that not a lot of people really know about. And so Jolene is trying to get from downtown Phoenix to way out in the middle of the desert in a place called Alamo Lake State Park, which is about 100 miles from downtown Phoenix. So how does a kid with like no resources and no one helping her do that? And do that quickly. And so if you wanted to, like if a child wanted to, they could map Jolene's adventure on a real Arizona map, and they could literally follow her adventure across the state of Arizona, and they could take the same journey as her. I've taken her journey. And so, yeah, so Alamo Lake State Park is one of our favorite places in Arizona, and hardly anyone really knows about it. It's really cool. There's like never anyone there. And we go and we've explored like this whole giant area, and there's a mud canyon there, which she runs into. There's a really cool slot canyon there. There's all kinds of ruins and historic sites and like a 100-year-old graveyard and all kinds of just really, really cool stuff. Waterfalls, like people are like, what? There's a waterfall in the middle of all this like desert. And my husband, he was actually kind of upset with me when I decided to place it there, because he was like, now people are going to know about it and now they're going to go there. And when we go there, there will be more people. I'm like, I seriously doubt it. But yeah, so it's all real in places that I really love. And I love pulling all of the really unique, interesting, quirky, great things about Arizona, not just the desert, but just so many little places. Like there's a little restaurant in the middle of Alamo Lake State Park, like in the middle of nowhere, that I put in there. I gave it a different name, but it's based on a real place. And so, it's full of all these really fun things that I put that Jolene gets to see and go out. And she's never seen anything like this before. And it's like, why is there a little restaurant in the middle of nowhere, like 50 miles from like the nearest gas station? I don't know, but there is.
Great. Yeah, that sounds exciting. I would like to go also. I saw Meghan put it in the chat that she would like to go.
I'm just so curious, Dusty, if they did maps for your book, because that sounds like that would have been a perfect thing. Did you get maps in your book?
No, there's no map in my book, which I also think as well it would be really cool, because Jolene is also like an aspiring cartographer. And so she has mapped her friend who likes to fly this ultralight trike in the desert where she's trying to find her. She's been mapping her flying adventures, which is how she's even able to go search for her in the first place, because she never tells her where she is or where she goes because of safety issues and things like that, because they've never met in person. But for this event, I know that there was going to be like an activity guide where they talked about map making and stuff.
That's awesome. I can't wait to read your book.
Oh, thanks.
Gregory, so your book features two primary protagonists, yeah? Meryl and Goat Girl. Which of those two would you prefer to hang out with? If you are in a situation where you could run into them, which one would you like to see?
Oh, that's, I still struggle with that question a lot. Yeah, I know. Yeah, and it's, stay. So they both want the attention all the time. And I think they're both an extension of me, but what I think is really interesting in talking with people is some just gravitate very heavily to like some really likes Goat Girl and other people really, really like Merle. And it's because they are so different. So this is I guess the quiet me, and this is the energetic of me being expressed out into the book. And I think that's part is, no matter which way you land, most of the time, there's always room to bring in the other personality. And, quiet time is fantastic, especially the older you get. I think quiet time's great. But I also love going out, on hikes and adventures. But I haven't done the hot air ballooning, which Goat Girl does, but maybe someday.
Sure, thank you. Anna and Barbara. So among all the authors here, you two have the distinction of being co-authors for this particular book. What was that like? What was that experience like? Elaborate a little for us.
Well, as I said, I'm an art teacher, and so I'm always looking for more resources to use with my students. And I grew up knowing about Maria Martinez and her pottery, but couldn't really find a children's book about her, anything really relevant for younger readers. And so in doing my research, I found Barbara's name as a potter, and I was so excited when I reached out to her that she was willing to do this with me. I think it's something she always wanted to do as well. So we've had lots and lots of long, great phone conversations. We're both night owls, so we have talked a lot. I'm actually in Colorado, but nearby, so I got to go meet Barbara before the pandemic and see the Pueblo and where Barbara lives, and it's just been fantastic. Such a cool experience for me.
Well, it was certainly an experience over the telephone. And then once we got started on the book, the hours that we spent on the computer. And the most interesting thing that I find out of the whole book is seeing an artistic viewpoint that came out and I think enough credit isn't given to the people that do the artwork on it. And this is the picture that I find that's very interesting. Oh, can you see it? Oh, I don't know if it can capture the people, the artistic view, and the artist is Philandra, and she's Oneida Indian, and she was able to capture, the idea of the heritage involved in pottery making and how it can be carried on through the different generations. Some of it, her characters are going backwards and some of the characters are going forward, which gives, I think, a view for the students as at a young age where you can sense that, time does not end, time continues. And as long as there is a breath of life and an artistic means of showing this through this book, I think we kind of Philandra captured that as an artist's viewpoint.
Thank you. Yeah, that's give me a lot to think about. Julia, so people discover dinosaurs all the time, right? I mean, that's kind of what I hear anyway. So why focus on Ruth? Why did Ruth's story pop out so much for you?
You're not the first person to ask me that, Lucas. I wanted to write about Ruth because she was a kid who found the most incredible treasure in her backyard that any kid would want to find, right? And I just felt like every kid could relate to that. That said, I do tell kids, don't start digging in your own backyard without your parents' permission. But it's obviously a metaphor too, right? That there are things all around us that we might overlook, but that might be much more amazing than we think.
Great, thank you, thank you. Meghan, so I noticed here, because again, I haven't read your book, but you wanted us to perhaps ask you about the refrain, "Just wait, you'll see." I really need to know more about that. As a
Well,
historian by trade, this sort of thing interests me.
thanks for asking, Lucas. I get asked this question all the time because there is a refrain in my book, and sometimes you find those in picture books, and I think it's been an especially loved device in picture book biography. And part of the reason why is because it helps get some audience participation in a book that can be maybe a little bit longer. And so this text actually came to me, the muse was very strong. It doesn't happen all the time in my writing, but it happened for this book. I was doing so much research and listening and taking in all of the Ann Richards media I could. I was watching interviews and going to different university libraries and watching discontinued HBO films and all these things. And I just kept finding myself trying to figure out the beginning of the story. And I had heard this story about when Anne was born. Her mother had had her in the birthing room of their little clapboard house on the prairie. And it was the middle of the Great Depression. And they had a neighbor who was going to come over and make dinner, but the neighbor was a little squeamish. And so the mother, Anne's mother, was in her birthing bed with little Anne there and rang a chicken's neck for dinner. And I felt like that had to be this start of the story. And then I kept thinking of all the things, the other things that were going to happen in her life. And they were just kind of very sort of ordinary things. A girl who, went barefoot in her neighborhood and rode her bike all the time. And a girl who played half-court basketball for her basketball team, and just very ordinary life. And I just kept telling myself, as I'm imagining, relating this story to children, just wait. It's like, you'll see, it's gonna get better. She's gonna make a difference. I promise you, hang with me, just wait, you'll see. And so I used that refrain in the text of the book to kind of keep my audience with me. And then at the very end, spoiler alert for those of you who haven't read it, you get this great spread of all of these young women of all abilities and all kinds who can potentially see themselves doing things that are maybe unimaginable.
Very good, thank you.
Lucas, could I
Okay.
jump in for a second?
Please.
I just wanted to say what I think is so exciting about books like Meghan's and Anna and Barbara's, and hopefully mine, is that kids' literature is correcting the historical record. And we're writing about these women who should have been written about decades before, but no one paid attention to them necessarily. And they're getting the spotlight for the first time in so long. I think when many of us were growing up, there were too few books about women historical figures, even though we all know they were doing important things. So it's so exciting to becoming an author during that time when these women for the first time are kind of getting the attention they deserve.
Yes, here. I agree. Very exciting to see this happening. Christian, you have it's a very unique approach to your book. Could you go into detail a little bit more? Video games, very interesting. I love video games, they're fun. You mentioned briefly you got yourself addicted to video games to write this. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm going to summarize this really, really quickly because I actually want to talk about something else, because now video games are the most boring thing on the chopping block. So it had been so long since I'd played games, and because I did want to address like the effects that they had in our society, I definitely took an entire month and only played video games where I genuinely tried to get myself addicted to Candy Crush and like whatever that farming game on Facebook is, and World of Warcraft, and anything I could just sink my eyes on. And I drank coffee and ate sweets and just did whatever I wanted. I just lazed out and was 17 again, and it was awful. It was horrible. I hated every second of it. The moment that that month ended, I completely cut myself off from all electronics and sugar and caffeine and alcohol and like everything else. And I had to go through the program that I was writing for the kid who was doing, and it was hard. And that's basically how I wrote it. But what I would actually like to talk about is Gregory's book, because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about our theme a little bit, and you know how many facets it has and how they all combine. And I think that Gregory's book is the kind that honestly plants the seeds for this type of growth and this type of understanding and this type of coming together, right? Which is that you find the person who is completely different from you, and you embrace them and you accept them. And, you know, it obviously this is like a huge piece in picture books and has been throughout history. And Gregory has obviously done an exceptional job with that theme, because it's something that we always have to explore, especially as we become more diverse. What's astounding to me is that, you know, kids are just like awash in this lesson, and Gregory's doing the good work of like doing just incredible ventriloquism to bring a believability to it and delivering this thing. And basically what it tells me is that all the time we treat tiny kids like, hey, you have to be good to people, and you have to share, and you have to say please, and you have to say thank you. And then the adults don't do it. So more adults should be reading those picture books and actually absorbing those lessons, I think. And, you know, I find it very, very inspiring and lovely that these stories are still being told, and, you know, in a very child appropriate and friendly way. And yeah, great. Video games are fine.
I learn from picture books every day.
Yeah.
Both fiction and nonfiction. And all of my kids of all ages read them. I think we all would be better off if we read more picture books. But I am a little biased.
I know I
That's
want
okay. I think
picture
that's-
books now that have been discussed today. I'm sure I'll learn a lot.
I know I've learned a whole bunch. I've been taking notes on the side. It's very interesting.
Gregory, you turned beet red when I started talking about you, and I hope you didn't think that I was going to be like, well, all of these others are doing the good work, and this one is about cowboys. I was like trying to get to the part where I was complimenting you fast, so sorry I put you on the spot.
No,
I was just excited to talk about you and the themes and the seeds.
it's all good. It just surprised me, if anything, because yeah, on the picture book side, many times I think they do get discounted, but they can be some of the most powerful books out there. I mean, I've been in real work meetings, and people have brought in, say, like The Dot or some other books, just say, have you read this book? Because they're reading it to their kids or something like that, but it just strikes them so strong. So that's, you know, creating a very simple message without talking down to someone or finger pointing, so that they can absorb it how it best suits them, and how they can take it and interpret the idea and how it applies to them and how it applies to their world. I think that's the great thing about picture books.
I've tried to write 5 and I have failed every time. Like,
Yeah, I
you
was
need
gonna
me
say
to
there's a reason I don't write them either.
yeah, you need me to write a 60,000 word novel, no problem. 1,000 words picture book, nope, I'm done. I can't do
It's
it.
harder than
That's-
it looks.
It seriously, Julia,
I can
applause.
sympathize.
Yeah, that's a real pet
Um,
peeve of mine when people act like if you write picture books, like, oh, well, that's not real writing or something, or those aren't real books. It's like, oh my gosh, like, I just want to.
Writing is writing.
Well, and
No.
I think that sentiment, unfortunately, prevails among all of kids literature, unfortunately. I think that there are a lot of adults that look at kid lit and feel like it's less than, and I just feel like nothing could be further from the truth. These kids, I learned to love to read when I was a child, and probably all of you did also. And I think offering children great literature at young ages is what makes great citizens and a great community. So hats off to all of you who are doing super great work and really bringing high quality literature. And also to our illustrators, I haven't mentioned my illustrator yet, but I think that Barbara is right that illustrators don't necessarily get enough praise. And so Carlin Witt did the illustrations for mine, and maybe we can go around and say who did cover art or illustrations, because I wouldn't be here without the illustrators that I've worked with.
Yes, we will definitely do that. But I want to give Tyler a chance to answer this question. It's actually a really good segue about reading in childhood. Tyler, you mentioned here that you were a reluctant reader, and now you ended up writing a book. Tell us about that.
I grew up as a terribly reluctant reader, capable but reluctant, clock watching, page counting. I bet if you could talk to the adults that were around me in my childhood, probably awfully whiny about it. And I used to think that it was because reading is a very idle thing to do, and I was a very busy, tapping, racy, bouncy kind of body. It was hard to sit down, but as I grew up, I think I discovered that might not be true, because it was actually my sophomore year of college in a children's lit class when I got handed Rebecca Steed's 2010 Newbery winner, When You Reach Me, and went through that, and it changed everything for me. And truly, I had just never read a book quite like that. You know, I would read in school when told to, but it was never an activity that I was particularly drawn to. Just to be honest, it was like, get it done, get the task done, move on. And as I looked back, you know, I stuck with reading what was popular as a kid. When I grew up, it was all about Harry Potter, so that's what I read. It was all about Narnia, so that's what I read. And I'm not going to say anything negative about any of those things. It just turns out that that really wasn't the genre that spoke to me the most. But when I started getting into that middle grade realistic fiction kind of piece, and if you've read When You Reach Me, we can debate the genre later, no spoilers. It just worked for me. And I read it, and I went straight to my roommate at the time, who was a seriously voracious reader. And I was like, I get it. Like, it just hit differently. And so that's when I started pouring into really middle grade realistic fiction. And that's what I like to read now. Every now and then I trail out of that and try to enjoy some fantasy. I struggle to enjoy fantasy. That is just me. My book is middle grade realistic fiction too. It's what speaks to me. And so, you know, in teaching and it's probably really good practice to give kids books that align with their interests. And I think there's a place for that, and I get it. But there's also part of me that thinks there's got to be other kids out there who are like me, who need to be pushed off a cliff in a direction that they're not expecting. And that's where they're going to find their wings. Because When You Reach Me, 1970s girl in New York, I would have never picked up this book by choice. I would have never touched it. And it's 100% a book that changed everything for me. So, you know, what's the worst that could happen? Your reluctant reader now has some more exposure to new genre and style.
I think that once again speaks to this whole idea that we're just like, stories are stories, and we're not giving strength to librarians to understand the kids who were also reluctant readers. Tyler, I was one as well. I could not, I would be shocked at the job I got eventually because of how difficult it was for me to learn. And like, what a beautiful thing for somebody to align a life opening experience because they know that kid's heart in a way. I have to say really quickly, my librarian, when I checked out When You Reach Me, pushed the book across the counter and said, I'm not going to spoil it, I'll bleep it. But she goes, oh, it turns out it's a burp the whole time. And it's like the very, very ending. And I was like, yeah. So glad that you had a better one than me.
So to kind of close things up, yeah, let's talk about our illustrators briefly, if we would like to those that want to mention something, to give illustrators and cover art designers a nod. That's a good way to wrap things up. Anyone can start, or I can start calling on people, whatever we want to do. All right. So go ahead, Gregory.
Yeah, well, for mine, I was the author illustrator, but what a lot of people don't realize is the illustrator is many times sort of a co-author with the book, depending on the text. With this, I wrote the book, but there was a whole passage or a whole scene, and this is when it's a flashback, and it's when Merle ends up falling off his horse when he was a little, and that didn't exist until I started illustrating the book. Even when I was writing the book, that scene did not exist. And so with all picture books, there's leave room for the illustrator. And so where they can take that text and add to it and add a richness layer. And so, yes, credit authors and illustrators all the time.
Julia, I noticed you unmuted, or is that just a thing that I imagined?
No, I'd love to talk about Alexandra Bai. She is the fantastic, amazing illustrator of A Dinosaur Named Ruth. I think all of us had books come out last year, so many of you may have had the same experience that I did deep in the pandemic, getting an email from your publisher and seeing the first sketches, and then finally the color sketches. And I just remember sitting down and I'm not exaggerating, it truly just tearing up that this person that I had discovered that no one had ever written about before, and that Alexandra had brought to life in this beautiful way, in a rich way that I never could have expected. I'm just so grateful to her. I know she spent extra time on this book because she was really passionate about it. There are dinosaurs hidden on many of the pages. That's a little hint for you guys at home. And Alexandra is just a rising star. She illustrated the book, Dr. Fauci, the Boy from Brooklyn. You may have heard of that. That came out a few months ago. And I just feel really grateful that I got to work with her. And illustrators, I could not be doing this job without the incredible talent of illustrators like her. It's just thrilling to see your story be put on a page through art.
Cool, that's really cool. Yeah. I like that idea. Dinosaurs embedded in the pages. Yeah, go ahead, Barbara.
I would like to add that it's a very interesting point to bring out as far as the illustrators are concerned, is that they also have to do background check and work on what the characters actually look like. Because when we started out, Anna and I mean, it was hard to have this understanding that we're in the Southwest area. We don't live in teepees. We live in houses, adobe houses. And to understand that, the clothing is very much different. We might all be considered Native American Indians, but all our costumes and our traditions are very different. So the illustrator had to go do background research on what kind of clothes our traditional people wore and what we still use today. So in doing all the different illustrations page by page where the Indians were concerned, I had to make sure that the women's costumes were correctly done, that the hair was properly done, without thinking about all this. I think, she did a very good job and finally came through with bringing out the Southwestern, the Pueblo traditions, and to know, that she had to look at plants as well, because we don't all have saguaro plants in our backyards. I mean, we have yucca, but then certain kind of yucca, not the big yuccas that you see in magazines. And then cactus, the background had to be correct as well. So without thinking, a lot of people take it for granted that just because we're Native Americans, we're all alike. Believe you me, we are not alike. You know, we might be color wise as far as skin tone is concerned, but through beliefs and traditions, we're all very different.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Does anyone else have anything they want to add about the artists? I missed somebody. Tyler, go ahead.
Obviously, I don't have an illustrator, but David Miles did my cover, and if it's backwards, I apologize. But I really relate to what Julia said, where you get this email, and you're like, oh, I think I know what's in this email. And I was at a play practice, and I actually had to step outside and like catch my breath. I was like nervous to see like what this would look like, because it's important, and you poured the time into it, right? And you open that file, and I actually just tears in the eyes, just like I wish I had it in me to communicate visual art that way. I don't, and I'm so appreciative that those do, because it can really just take things to the next level. And where I wanted my story to have an element of, it's not an epic journey, it's a sensitive journey. I think that sensitivity is just so well captured by David Miles in the cover art. So I totally get that.
I have similar to both of y'all. I get asked all the time, is it so hard? Like, don't you have ideas of what the book should look like? And then you have to just hand that off. And I think, no, it's like the best part of it, because my art then is elevated exponentially by this visual media artist who does something that I can't even imagine. I keep saying that, but truly I can't imagine the way that Carlin was able to capture things. And about the research, Barbara, I found that I had a similar experience. I did a ton of research for mine, and I didn't really talk with, I don't know what the other authors of picture book experience, but my editor did not put me in touch with the illustrator until after the project was completely finished. And so when I saw the sketches, my favorite spread in the book is maybe not one that folks would think, but it's this one. And here's Anne, she's the county commissioner, and this bridge that's famous in Austin in the background, and she's with all of her 1970s construction workers, and there's a dog. And the dog is so important because there's a piece in Anne's autobiography about when she went to this road and bridge yard, the county road and bridge yard, and there are all these good old boys there, and she goes in and she says, boy, that is the ugliest dog I have ever seen. What is her name? And they wouldn't tell her. She was there for a meeting. And she finally she said, no, y'all need to tell me the name of this dog. You know, my dad swore like a sailor, you can tell me what the dog's name is. And they wouldn't tell her, and they wouldn't tell her. Finally, this one young guy raised his hand and said, well, her name is Miss Anne. They had named this ugly dog after her. And that, of course, didn't belong in the pages of the book, but Carlin saw it as this really funny piece, this really funny fact, part of her story, and she was able to kind of put it in as an Easter egg. And I saw that and I thought, it's perfect. Like, she did all of the same research and more that I did. And anyway, that was one of my favorite pieces.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other parting thoughts?
Lucas, I think some people would be surprised to know that we strive, even in children's books, for accuracy in the illustrations. I guess we've sort of touched on that already, but I mean, we had paleontologists weighing in on whether this dinosaur should have a head crest or not. Research had changed in the last 10 years. We had people weighing in on the colors of fossilized bones, the shapes of bones. And even though these are books for kids and they're clearly drawn for kids, you know, we try to bolster them up with facts and science. And I'm sure a bunch of you have great back matter as well. I love that, you know, in children's books now that we did not have as kids. And I have a bunch of scientific information in there about Edmontosaurus annecten. So it's surprising, you know, how much goes into these books.
Julia, is that a duck-billed dinosaur?
Oh my gosh, you're right. Did you know that just by looking at it?
Yeah, I was a pretty
Surprise.
big dinosaur kid when I was little, but I have also been thinking about them. And that was my favorite for sure, which is like, you know, and like the whole, because duck-billed dinosaurs were like the warm-blooded discovery that they were very mothering, right? Or do I have
Oh, I don't know if I've ever heard that. If that's true, I want to know more.
Yeah, because they weren't particularly reptilian, of course, in their caring for their young, but Okay, cool. Good. Glad to know I still got the eye for for duck-billed dinosaurs.
I'm gonna get back to you on that.
Okay, I'll be ready.
Okay.
Once you have it, you always have it, I suppose. Well, we did go a little bit over, but I was assured that that was okay. So I wanted to say thank you all for joining us today. Those watching or will be watching, well, are watching, and of course, all of our authors contributing here today. It's very exciting to hear about all these great things. So thank you very much.
It was an absolute pleasure, everyone. Sincerely, from the bottom of my heart. Keep up the good work.
I've
Thank
read
you,
some of your
Lucas.
books. Can't wait to read everyone
Thank
else's
you,
books.
Lucas.